They shouted for it. Now 19 states and D.C. are about to deliver it. I'm talking about a hike in the minimum wage, which is kicking in today. But will it mean more pay for fewer jobs? Allie Stuckey, she thinks so, but Danielle McLaughlin disagrees. So Allie, what has got you so concerned here?
Well, you know, I'm not an economist, but I am a millennial, which means high school wasn't that long ago for me. So I remember Econ 101 pretty well. And what I learned was that when the price of something goes up, people buy less of it. So when the price of labor goes up, employers will buy less labor. We saw this to be true with both Wendy's and Target over the past couple years. Wendy's has raised wages both in 2016 and in 2017. And as a result, they had to slash hours of labor by 31 hours. And the same kind of thing happened with Target. When they raised the wages, they had to drive up the cost of their products. People stopped buying their products, and so their profits plummeted. That's the only thing that happens when you raise wages. Unemployment goes up, and the cost of living gets higher as well.
So these are all really interesting and important points, and there's something to that. Danielle, however, we're in an environment right now where I think labor has really been punished to the expense of capital. In other words, capital has been rewarded tremendously over the last decade. Labor has not. And we used to live in an environment where, you know, these two things were not so out of whack. No. But now they're completely out of whack, which means if you're a worker, it's a much harder future for you than, you know, if you're the one with money that's, say, investing in the company that employs that worker. And how do we bring that back into alignment and not allow the government to do that?
That's a great question, and I understand that sort of the conservative viewpoint being that government shouldn't be getting involved in the price of labour. I will say Ali makes some great points about prices raising. That certainly will happen with a minimum wage going up. One place that a minimum wage increase helps is poverty. So 22% of people earning the minimum wage, they're not all teenagers working in fast food joints, 22% are people who are living at the poverty level. And a number of studies collected by UMass Amherst indicated that since the 1990s, 11 or 12 studies showed that if you increase the minimum wage, you decrease poverty. And that's something that we need to think about societally.
Allie, I mean, how do you respond to that? Because I think we all have empathy for anybody who's working hard in a minimum wage job and is still stuck in poverty. I mean, that's not an America we like, right? We should reward work, and, you know, for many people, they're making a calculated decision in some cases, maybe not to go to work because it's easier to just live off of government subsidies. So if we want to encourage people to get out there and be working, how do we do it in a way that is not onerous for employers?
Of course. Well, I simply don't think that raising the minimum wage is going to do that long term. I do think that we could see some instant gratification. Of course, people being raised above the poverty line when they make more than the minimum wage. But as I was saying earlier, companies simply can't sustain that without laying employees off or creating automated systems. You talked about capital. A lot of companies are willing to invest in capital like automated systems rather than investing more in employees. And I'm afraid that if we continue to raise the minimum wage, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see more self-serve kiosks at McDonald's and Wendy's rather than investing in more employees. And then that's definitely going to lead people into more poverty because it'll lead to unemployment.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. I mean, because Danielle, the companies are doing what's best for them, and they have more leverage here.
No, they certainly do, and I guess that's the question: at what point does government get involved to try and make the case for the people who are less fortunate than others? You know, I was a minimum wage worker. I was I was a waitress for many years through grad school. But I'm not the kind of minimum wage worker that some of these minimum wages are meant to protect. And as I said before, it's about working people, full-time working people who can't make ends meet.
Maybe this gets us back to the welfare reform argument that Paul Ryan has tried to push. In other words, maybe we need a system in this country that rewards work and helps people maybe that are on minimum wage, helps them to move up the ladder in some way, shape, or form, rather than just giving them a check every week. I mean, these are policy changes perhaps that we should be talking about right now, Allie, because instead of saying, okay, every employer you're going to have to pay, this much money, and let's not forget, You know, if you're in a different state or a different part of the country, minimum wage means different things in different places. It's not going to go as far in New York City as it may in Kansas. That's just a reality. So how do we address this? What policies should we be looking at, Allie, to try and address the poverty issue without forcing employers to pay whatever we decide they should pay? Government decides they should pay.
Right. I think, well, you and Paul Ryan are on the right track with welfare reform. And you also made a good point about especially the federal government setting the minimum wage. It just simply doesn't address the issues that are unique to communities and to cities and people on a statewide level. It just doesn't take into consideration the cost of living. So simply regulating a price at which people have to pay for labor simply doesn't address the issue at hand, which is that we have a system that doesn't necessarily incentivize people to work. And I think that's where we have to start rather than putting a Band-Aid on a very pervasive and insidious issue.
Some good points from both of you. Thank you so much. A razor-thin majority for Republicans in the Senate. Can they hold on? That is coming up. And taking a road trip in the new year, you might want to bring more cash. And it's got nothing to do with gas prices. Found out why next.